I had a blast speaking to Brian Penshaw. He is a powerhouse. He's also AIA New Jersey's current president. Brian doesn't just design spaces. He's been at the forefront of architectural leadership, from chairing committees to revitalizing Newark's historic district. Get ready to meet the powerhouse that is Brian Penshaw. He is AIA's New Jersey current president. Brian doesn't just design spaces. He's been at the forefront of architectural leadership, from chairing committees to revitalizing Newark's historic district. He's an award-winning design guru, I would call him. I had a blast interviewing him. And he's not just about blueprints. He's really rewriting the script on so many things, from business to AI and beyond. And beyond the drawing board, Brian's weekends are a mix of family adventures, nature hikes, and lighthouse climbs. Buckle up for an engaging dive into architecture, AI, and a bit of Brian's extraordinary journey.
So why do people do business?
The main reason business is done is to meet unmet needs, right? So if you don't understand people, you don't understand business, and you need to learn all about people. One of the biggest problems that I had early on learning was asking people what they needed. And I thought it seems logical if I just ask people what they needed and then give them what they needed, that would be the roadmap to success in business. But I found out that it really wasn't. Number one, people aren't really sure about what they need. What they are sure about is that they've already gotten a solution to fill that need, but they've never even gotten to the underlying need. So they've already I need somebody to come and put a new wall up. That's not a need. You don't need somebody to put up a wall. What your need is more space so that your family can live in a more appropriate way. They're not on top of each other. Now, you've already decided the solution was the wall. So you've already decided how you're going to meet your need. And now you're looking for somebody to do that. And now you need to pay somebody, control somebody, however you're going to get them to do the thing you want them to do to already provide the solution that you've made up in your head. Most people are like this. They're not identifying the need. They're identifying their solution and they're looking for help. I thought if we just ask people what they need, they're going to tell us, and then we'll be able to provide the solutions for their needs. They're not telling you what their needs are because they don't know. They haven't uncovered them. What they're telling you is the solution that they already have, and they want you to implement it. This is where we run into problems, because the solutions that they have normally, most of the time, are half-baked. They don't have the expertise. They haven't had the experience. They haven't had the training. They're sure that if they just get this one thing, that'll solve their problem. If you go along providing that service for somebody, providing that solution to them, they are not going to be happy with you. Why not? I gave them everything they asked for. Yes, but you didn't meet their needs. You gave them the solution they were looking for, which was half-baked. And you'd expect them to be happy because that's what they asked for. But they're not going to be happy with you. Why? Because you didn't know people. So if you can uncover the need that the people have and then give it to them without them asking, then you've got your secret. Now, you and I do this in our design process by interviewing and programming and finding out those uncovered needs that the client really has. And we already know most of what they are from other clients and other similar people in similar situations. So we recognize how to provide solutions that those clients haven't even thought of yet. In other industries, how do you uncover what the client really needs? How do you provide that service to them without them asking? The reason it's without them asking is you want to create less friction for somebody. If you're asking them to tell you what it is they need, that requires them to put effort into you helping them. If you're asking your client to put effort into them helping you help them, they're not going to want to do it. There's too much friction. There's too much problems already. So I see a lot of these courses online that if you sign up for my course and it's $1,000 a year or whatever, results may vary, but you do all the work and you will have all the results and all the glory. Like most of these things are the house flipping seminars. There's several other kind of things where you just show up and it's a little bit of a pyramid scheme or some other kind of thing to get the guy who's giving the seminar rich and leave most of the people that are involved in the seminar holding the bag. They were told, you do this, and this. Realize it's a near impossible lift to get all those things done. Maybe there's one or two that are successful and they're going to have to share half the profits with the guy that told them how to do it anyway. But most people just give up their $1,000 for the course and can't implement the process. Why? There's too much stuff to do.
And too much knowledge and experience that is necessary in order to get there.
And too much luck, right? So like somebody hits on a perfect idea once in a blue moon. Like, how did Jeff Bezos come up with Amazon? Well, Jeff Bezos was an analyst in 1997 in New York City for a stock trading company. And he saw that online sales were growing 2,300% per year. And he said to himself, I got to get in this business online selling stuff because it's growing if you're in any business that's going 2,300% per year, you're going to do well, right? But how do you decide what to sell? He thought of himself, what's the first best product to sell? He looked for the thing that had the most variants, the most options to buy, and that's books. At any time, there's about 3 million books in print for sale. Music comes next with about 200,000 copies, albums, songs for sale. And then beyond that, it starts to drastically reduce. I would say fashion is a close third behind all of that. And then maybe cars, automobiles, things that are starting to, like what Amazon you can see the progress that they made. They started with books, they branched into music and CDs, and then they filtered down into the lower used products, the ones that didn't sell as often. He went to right where the biggest growth and the biggest pool of sales items were and chose those. It was very, very smart. How did Elon Musk get rich? Well, he basically stole a few companies from people and then bought them and then sold them and then stole some more and then bought and sold and stole some more. Didn't come up with any single good ideas on his own. Didn't go in those directions. Just sort of bullied himself and his snake oil salesman type personality into getting rich. Which option would you rather have, which would help you to sleep at night more, knowing that you used your brain and effectively chose some of the best options that could possibly be out there and got rich doing that? By the way, both ways require to utilize the effort of other people. That's leveraging the power of people. We got to talk about that a little bit more, about leveraging the power of people besides leveraging the power of money.
100%. Collaboration is so important.
Absolutely. It's more than just that in a capitalistic society, though. Everybody needs to win in a way, but when you're the boss, you need to win a little bit more than all of the employees. It doesn't mean abuse them, but if the company isn't the vessel that's carrying all of you together, you're going to sink, right? So the company has to kind of come first. That's why, like Kiyosaki says in Rich Dad, Poor Dad, you got to kind of pay yourself first. And there's all this profit first mentality. The reason is if you as a sole proprietor aren't paying yourself first, you're going to go out of business. You're going to sink. You can't carry anybody with you. You can't have any employees. You can't provide for the company. And a company is a group of people pulling together all in the same direction to get the same goals accomplished. If you're forming a company, you got to care about the people first, not the business. The people are going to get your business done. So without them, you can't do any of it. How you leverage the power of those people? Steve Jobs said, hire smart people, and we don't tell them what to do. They tell us what to do. I love that.
Right. You're the sum of the 5 people that you spend the most time with.
And micromanaging those people is not going to get you the results that you need. But where does that come from? It's fear-based. If I don't tell them exactly how to do it, when to do it, it's not going to get done the right way, and then everything will come falling down.
Yeah, and I find that happens a lot in construction projects, design projects. There's a lot of micromanaging because there's a lot of money that's involved.
And money creates the intense emotions and mostly fear resolving all of that. I would encourage everybody to try to create a much more safe working space where mistakes are allowed. I'm not talking about major mistakes during construction where there's going to be disasters or danger, but I'm talking about a space where people can ask questions and learn while they're on the job without fear of making a mistake. That fear of shame leads the new guy to put, 10 boxes of screws in the sheetrock on one wall. And you're like, the spacing is only supposed to be 7 inches or whatever, and you've got them spaced every inch. Did you think somebody was going to steal the panels off the wall? Why did you use so many screws? Because they didn't know, and they thought more was better. So they put more. Or somebody said, screw all of the panels up and use the screws. They thought you meant use all the screws, not just use the screws. So they put all the screws in the wall. You come back later, what are you going to do? Yell at them? Fire them?
Make them feel like they're
It's an opportunity for learning and empowering your employees to take that step of, we're going to get this done. We're going to do it in an appropriate way. Let's not do it the wacky way or just follow directions by the letter of the law. It diminishes that power of people. It eliminates your leverage on them. So you need to be the brain for everybody that you're paying. It's a surefire way to make sure that you stay very, very small is requiring yourself to think for 3 or 4 other people. You can't grow past maybe 15 people. How many people can you think for effectively? I mean, sometimes it feels like we're thinking for our families, our children, or spouses or something like that, just to, okay, you're having a bad day. I understand. I can do a little bit of the executive function for you. But if you're trying to run a company of 15 people and try to think for everybody, it's going to sink. You need to have everybody like a sailing ship pulling in the same direction, adjusting the sails, controlling the, if you're telling them everything to do, you're the captain, that metaphor, you're going to sink. You need to trust the people and leverage their thinking into you making money.
I really love how you think, and I love the strategy that you have behind everything. It's a human-based approach, and there's a lot of passion that you have for this aspect and for that mindset. What do you think is what is the thing that you're most passionate about that drives your work?
Mostly it's innovation in architecture and spaces. This is an industry that goes very, very slowly. And there are good reasons for it to go very, very slowly. We want things that are proven. We're building buildings that could sometimes put thousands of people in them and have all of their lives at risk in our buildings. So we want to make sure that what we're doing is sound best practices based in science, and that we know that the building's not going to fall down. It's not held up by prayer alone. But other times, we need to move it forward. We can't be building the same old ways that are not sustainable or not healthy. When we learned that asbestos was materials that were bad for people when it was friable, stopped building with asbestos. These are slow changes, but when we know better, we do better. Now the pace of technology is changing at breakneck speed. It is really, really hard to keep up with how fast things are changing. And I want to talk a little bit about that too, because there's one thing that doesn't seem to be changing so much. Our tech is, but our fashion and our design and our automobiles, their style has really kind of stagnated. Take a look at the way comparing the way things look to the way things function over the past 40 years. I would say starting in 1950s was a very definable decade. 1960s also, between clothing styles, car styles, architecture styles, 70s, 80s, 90s. You can see the change happening into grunge. And we get to the year 2000, maybe 2003, 20 years ago. If you look at the television programs on the TV from 2003, 20 years ago, you'll see the clothing styles haven't really changed all that much to now. What about the car models? They're not drastically different in either shape or color or style. There's no new, we didn't get the flying car like we were promised. None of the new style came about. We've kind of been frozen in time. However, the technology behind all of that stuff has drastically changed. We have the self-driving car now. It's not in my driveway, but they do exist out there. And the building technology has changed quite dramatically, especially with the requirements for energy code. But the shape of our buildings hasn't really changed that much. If you look at what the home builders are putting up, the national home builders, the ones that are public companies, there's not that different of a style from the McMansions that were going up in the 90s. We've trended a little bit smaller in terms of the size of the houses, but I think that's mostly an economics-driven kind of thing. We're just not innovating in terms of fashion, design, and style as fast as we were before. I don't know what the reasons are behind it, but I know technology has something to do with it.
Do you have any guesses?
Well, it could be, at the time, I remember in the 1980s, we only had access to music if you bought it and got to play it yourself, tapes, albums, whatever. Television shows came on and you had to be home to watch them at a certain time. But a lot of the influence was much more fleeting. So there were flash in the pan influence styles that people wanted to jump on board with and conform with, because that was the current style of the day, of the time. And it was kind of announced and then disappeared. It was in and out. Fads, fashions, pet rocks, the bangles on the wrists, the hairspray in the hair, all of those things that came and went because they were singular moments in time where people got to see them. Now the best of all things that have ever been created are at our fingertips to watch, to expose ourselves to, and compare with the best things of other times. So if you want to watch a television program from the 90s, you can pull it up on Netflix and watch anytime you want. If you want to see all of the art from the 1400s. Just pull it up on your computer and look at it at all time, and you compare it to each other era. So we're getting a much more eclectic view of all of the best of design throughout time, all rolled together all at once. Now, that freezes things into more of the best quality of eclectic design, but it doesn't provide for these little pockets of new fashion design. Like Lady Gaga's meat dress never really took off. Not that I thought it would.
I don't think anyone did.
Those are kind of examples where like it hasn't been something that has been outrageous that a group of people have jumped onto. Anything that is a trend in design right now, and I'm thinking like the vertical board and batten white siding with black window trim and black window muntins, that's kind of like a defining thing I see from an exterior point of view, kind of like taupe was in the 90s. Everything was made out of taupe in the 90s, some variants of the color of it. That's a new trend right now. If you ask people what it is they like about it, they cannot tell you what need it is that is being met by that particular design style.
Do you find that that's what you're most passionate about, pushing boundaries?
Yeah, probably. It's probably because I didn't have very good boundaries for a while. Like I had to learn how to shore up my boundaries. But on the edge of understanding of architecture, of design, being on the edge, on the limits there, allows for both creativity and for expansion in growth. It's not safe out here on the edge of design. You're not going to feel safe. There's higher risk involved with the design, being on the edge. There's also higher reward. And it's not just financial reward. There can be financial reward. If you take a look at postmodern houses compared to a regular shingle style or center hall colonial that's being put up, the postmodern style house will sell for 3 to 4 times as much for the same square footage. Is it because of the materials or flat roof? No. It's just because of the design, the configuration, how the spaces go together, and the overall look that stands out as from being non-conformist to the rest of the neighborhood. It doesn't mean it doesn't blend in or fit with the neighborhood. It's just not as conformist. The people that are non-conforming in our society tend to make more money. They tend to have higher incomes and more willing to accept things that are outside of the norm in terms of design. They're the ones that push fashion forward. They're the ones that push design forward. They're the ones that are trying. That being said, the ultra rich, they don't know what they want. They're not the ones pushing the design forward. They're the ones that are copying things from the artists, from the ones that are on the edge that are pushing things forward. To know what the ultra rich wants and to get into their pocket, follow the trendy artist types. Follow those depressed neighborhoods that are transforming into new, vibrant neighborhoods. When you see what's happening there, the ultra rich are going to latch on with what they're doing, and they're going to want that. They're going to want that particular new style that's emerging from wherever it is. So paying close attention to how those changes are happening, you'll know what the ultra rich want. They're conformist. They're like most other people. They just don't know how to get exactly what. It's very rare that you find an ultra rich person that is, what do they say, like an odd duck, an eclectic, strange person, that's out there. They're out there. They do exist, but it's rare. Most of the time, the ultra rich, they want to copy what's appropriate, what people believe that they want.
Yeah, and those warehouses are a great example of transforming a space from something that wasn't necessarily usable to something that's pushing the boundaries. And nobody would have thought of it, and that's why the people that did are the ones that made a lot of money from it.
And then there's colossal failures in the same vein. WeWork was a great idea that we're going to start bringing people together in these office spaces. And however, I think they got too big, too fast, tried to do too much, and it kind of all came falling down.
Right. But it did inspire everybody else, like a lot of the smaller companies, to start creating co-working spaces. I think it did birth a new generation.
Absolutely transformed the space. And it was a flash in the pan kind of thing that offered a lot of ideas. There's nothing wrong with starting and failing. This is we put a lot of judgment into what other people have done as whether it was good or bad or successful or not. And we may be judging them based on what our definitions of success are or our definitions of good or bad are. There's nothing wrong with starting and failing. It's not really over or a complete failure because most of those lessons learned can be applied to the next venture. And it's not over, right? It's not the end. There is certainly a lot of bad feelings with losing a company, with having things not work out the way they want to do. But if you approach it from a mindset, a growth mindset of learning, there's a great book from a Harvard psychologist named Carol Dweck called Mindset. If you haven't read it yet, grab a hold of the copy or an audio copy. And it really is the difference about growth mindset and a fixed mindset. And I've always had a growth mindset where I believe that you can be smarter. You can learn more. You can expand your mind. It's not fixed. You're not set with a inherited set of traits that you're stuck with. I've heard of many people say, well, I'm just not that smart, or I'm not good at math, or I don't know how to draw. I need somebody else to do that for me. You're not that smart yet. You're not good at math yet. And you haven't learned how to draw yet, right? Because you haven't put in the time and the effort and the willingness to learn all those things. When you put in the time and the effort and the willingness, you'll get the results of learning those things. The ability is there. The growth is there. It's just have to decide, am I the type of person that knows how to do math, that likes doing math, that's good at math? I only use that because it's a common topic that people are like, oh, I'm not that good at that. And I hear often as an architect, well, you must be very good at math. I do not sit here doing partial differential equations all day. I rarely, the most math I do is counting my money, you know.
And that goes back to what we were discussing before the show, which was that you said you shore up the things that you're not as good at, and that you're constantly working to improve in areas that maybe you weren't as good at before. Can you tell us a little bit more? You were talking about the specifications.
Well, my first example is in high school in the 80s, I used to watch the early episodes of Jeopardy with Alex Trebek. And I almost religiously watched this program. It was quite enjoyable for me at 7 p.m. to sit down with my plate of food and answer all the trivia questions, unless they had the category art history. And I was like, oh God, art history. I'm not going to know anything about this. And I really didn't. I was atrocious. I didn't know any of the artists. I didn't know any of the styles. And when I would go to the museum, it would be nice to look at them, but I didn't understand really why the paintings were in the museum as opposed to like being sold in the Walmart. It didn't make any sense to me about why a Monet was different than Thomas Kincaid. And what's the real underlying story about why is this in a museum? It sparked a curiosity in me to find out more. I was at the MoMA and standing in front of the giant Jackson Pollock, the mural that goes across the whole room. And there was a man there standing with his nephew. And he said, I don't get it. I could do this. It's just paint thrown on the wall. And I said, no, it wasn't on the wall. It was on the floor. And number two, no, you can't. Like, you're not Jackson Pollock. You don't have the motivation, the idea of automatic painting. You haven't figured, and you certainly don't have enough scotch to be able to get drunk enough to be able to create that. And I said it out loud to him, and he's like, he didn't understand why the painting was on there. But his first idea was to be disparaging. Not only disparaging, but also equating himself to a famous artist. I don't get that disparaging about what other people are doing. If I don't understand, I go to curious. So rather than D, disparaging, I go to C, curious. I want to find out why. That. Why are they doing that way? So if you see somebody that's doing something differently than you would do it, don't think they're crazy. Now, they may very well be absolutely batshit. Like, they can't figure, like, they're nuts. You may find that out in the end to be true, but to assume that at first is a big, big mistake. You're missing out on the opportunity to learn from them. They might know something you don't know. They might have a real good reason why they're doing that. So the first question, rather than why are you doing it that way, might be, why are you doing it that way? You know, like, I want to find out more. And it could be the same question, but there's no disparaging behind it. There's a lot of curiosity behind it. Disparagement will lead the other people to immediately put up their defense. When you're approaching with curiosity, they're going to be eager to tell you why they're doing it. Because you're interested in what they're interested in, they're going to want to share it. It leads to growth. You can reserve your judgment, your discernment for later. Like, wow, that person was a nut. They don't know what they're doing at all. Or that you don't have to tell them either. You don't have to tell them that they're wrong or that they should do it a different way. I've struggled with that urge a lot of times to correct people when I see, hey, you know, there's a better practice for doing this. I want to show them. I want to inform them because I think that I'm providing value to them by helping them.
The same goes for ourselves too, to hold space and support, you know, our own ideas and allowing ourselves, like we were discussing before, that innovation piece. We won't continue to innovate if we are constantly disparaging even of ourselves.
I learned a long time ago that unsolicited advice is always control. So I wasn't trying to help those people. I was trying to control them. So I don't offer unsolicited advice anymore. I just wait for people to ask me and then I'll give them their advice. And I don't take it personally if they don't take it. You can ask me, I can give you my advice and you can go do something different. It's your choice. If it works out for you, great. If it doesn't, I'm not even going to come and say, I told you so. I'm going to try to help you do what you want to do. It's not helpful for me to try to control other people. I haven't ever gotten anything out of it. I know where it comes from, that there's a sense of security in being able to control the environment around you, including other people, but you can't change the people around you. You can change the people around you, but you can't change the people around you.
What do you think is the biggest thing as an architect or as an individual that people misunderstand about you the most?
I think it's always my motivations and intentions. I don't have negative, selfish intentions at heart nearly ever. But much of this world is be wary of those people, right? You have to be aware that most people are thinking about themselves. Before I interact with other people, I try to make sure that my basic needs are met, that I'm not coming out to interact with them to get something from them. In that approach with other people, if you're approaching to get something from other people, it's sensed immediately. This goes back to my days like just dating at a bar. If you're walking up to somebody at the bar to introduce yourself to them and you're coming with the mindset of, I want to get something from you, instantly that person's going to know it. But if the only thing you're looking to do is make a connection, to form relationships, it's a lot easier. Your approach is more accepted. It's non-threatening. It's really there to build rather than to take. That leads me to an interesting, you remember I said it was going to be kind of stream of consciousness? While I talk about this stuff, my ADHD brain does a little like porpoising kind of thing. My kids and I like to play games that like thought experiments, and many of them come from theater type exercises and games to learn from. And one of our favorite ones is the yes and game and the no but game. And as a comparison, we're going to design a party. And we're going to go around the car or the room and everybody's going to get a turn. And we're going to say yes to the person whose idea was previously, and we'll add something new to add to the party. And when we play the yes and game, our parties get to be so huge, so extravagant, so wonderful that, yeah, they're amazing in terms of what you've built with the yes and game because it's additive and it's accepting of other people's ideas. You can contrast that by playing the no but game. And you start off trying to design a party, and then the next person always says no, but, and then adds the next thing. It ends up being like you and your cat at the party because nobody else is allowed because of all the restrictions that are put on there. You just get a different understanding of what the mindset of your approach to things are by playing this game with people, the yes and game.
Do you actually create those parties with your kids?
We can't get Taylor Swift at the North Pole with dancing polar bears. And, the ideas get extravagant. And the point is that it can't be real. You're going to get to need the no but people eventually. But the creative process doesn't come from the no but side. That's
I love that.
That's the value engineering, right? You're going to take things out because I can't afford Taylor Swift. I can't go to the North Pole. Maybe I can get dancing polar bears, but we got to find the company that has the polar bears and dresses them up. And there are ways that you can approach knowing which mindset to have when is really the wisdom that you're going to employ.
I really love that. I really love that.
Pie-eyed, and you're just thinking to yourself, yes, and all the time. You're ignoring the reality of scarcity, economics. We need to be able to pay for this. Budgets, right? Time constraints, even the reality of the world situation. But if you start from being a problem pointer outer, no, but you can't do it this, no, but you can't, no, you can't, no, you can't, you don't end up anywhere. So to start from the mindset of cost cutting rather than value building, you end up with zero project, zero anything. You don't end up with a party. You don't end up with anything because it's all no but. And the absolute cheapest way to build anything is to not build it at all. Put the money in your pocket and go home. You didn't risk anything and you have all that money. You didn't spend any of it. And then you say, no, but I wanted to build something. Well, there's the no, but again, right? Yeah. Well, you got down to the cheapest. The cheapest was $0 spent. You didn't spend anything. You saved all that money. You saved it all. Yes, and you got nothing.
So your philosophy in terms of value engineering is first start off with an expansion of ideas. And that's, again, pushing the boundaries. And you were saying the people that have the most money are the ones that are pushing the boundaries, are the ones that are innovating, but then have a sprinkle of reality in there. So take it back a notch.
You have to. The maximum value built in any project, in anything you're designing, is going to be somewhere in the middle of zero, not doing it at all, and the extreme end of spending all of your money and getting no value back from it. We've buried all that money in structure and foundations and waterproofing that we never ever see. Somewhere in the middle between those two is a maximum value. I like to think of it as an upside down x squared kind of like a parabola. We're looking for that peak in there. It could be more complex than just a parabola. I'm using that as the simplest one. There could be multiple peaks in there at multiple price points to maximize those values. And you might want to pick where you're going to be. Am I going to be in the low income space, the middle income space, or am I going to be at the high end? Most people just knee-jerk jump to the high end because they're like, oh, if I do things for rich people, I'm going to have the most percentage return. You can make maximum value at the low end doing more volume as long as you're maximizing the value in the project. Finding that sweet spot, maybe you have to spend more money. You have to find the financing to put it in there. Maybe you thought your budget was going to be $500,000, but you can really maximize the value at $800,000. How are you going to do that? That's where you use the leverage of money rather than the leverage of people, and you finance the project to get your $300,000 out, maximize the value, and you take into account the cost of the money that you're using to maximize the value. How do you figure that out? That's where you need your experts. That's where you need your designers. That's where you need the people that have done it before, that have fallen in certain pitfalls of design traps. Should I put this out there? What is the payback on amenities? What kind of amenities do I need in my multifamily space to get people to rent the space? Is it just providing the space? Is it just providing the amenities? Is it providing a space that people care about? I'll give you an example. The Jenga Tower in New York City? It's, I forget the address of it. It's downtown, and Herzog and de Meuron did the building. I don't know who was responsible for the interior design of it, but I had a friend that had an apartment inside that building. She was on the 12th floor, and she invited me in to see the place. And it has every amenity imaginable: pools, workout spaces, and they're gorgeous because each apartment's ridiculously expensive. You could line the floor with $100 bills, scoop it all up, put it in a bucket, and you still don't have enough for your monthly rent. The feeling of the interior design of the space is cold, brutalist, the exposed concrete on the inside. It's very unfeeling, uncaring. There's no warmth and compassion and kindness there. So it feels a lot like inside the Holocaust Museum in Washington, D.C., which also triggers a lot of feelings for me that are shock, horror, dismay. And because of the same type of finishes and lighting that museum has is inside this building, there were almost zero people using any of the amenity spaces. It didn't have to do with the amount of money that they poured into building this building. It was tremendous. They didn't maximize their value. They made a mistake in their design, and it looks interesting, but they didn't account for the feelings that people were going to get in the spaces, and they're not being used.
Wow.
That didn't maximize the value in the place. It makes the apartments less valuable than they could be. So by proper planning and proper understanding of what those maybe if they gamed it out and looked at it a little bit more, brought in maybe one more consultant, an environmental psychologist, she might have cost them $80,000 on the project or something like that. The amount that would have been made up in rents and the amenity spaces actually being used would have been tremendous compared to the value of paying for an environmental psychologist. So if you're value engineering a lot of the designers out, or I don't need an envelope consultant, I don't need the drafty windows and noisy windows are going to cause people not to want to live in that multifamily space anymore. They're going to look for someplace that's meeting their needs elsewhere. Had you paid for the envelope consultant and there weren't drafty windows, they were triple pane, they were nice and quiet, they couldn't hear anything, that comfort may not have been expressed by those tenants, but their staying in the building would certainly be reflected in the rent rolls. That's how you maximize value through design, is understanding and meeting the unmet needs of people without asking them what they are.
I love that.
Oftentimes we're seeking for what's the dollar amount on the balance sheet. and how can we add to the dollar amount on the balance sheet. And the fastest and easiest way that we think of to do it is not the best. The fastest and easiest way we think of doing it is cost cutting, because it's the most obvious idea. It's the most obvious idea because it's the most effective and easiest and fastest way to save money is cost cutting. We all like to do it. We all want the bargains. It feels great to get a good deal. But there's something known as the common law of business. And that basically says you can't get a lot without paying a lot, not on a consistent basis. It can happen once in a blue moon, but it doesn't happen day after day after day after day. If it does, you're Bernie Madoff.
Nobody wants that.
Well, it's a nice life if you can get it. It's a nice life if you can rip everybody off and then just die real quick in prison. I have a lot more inner shame and respect for myself to treat other people that way. I believe that meeting people's unmet needs without them asking is the best way to maximize your value. They're not even going to understand why they will want to pay an extra $1,000 a month to live in those apartments that you have designed. They just know that it feels right. It feels like where they're supposed to be. Why? Why does it feel that? I'm sure you've been in places where, like, this feels very, very comfortable. This feels right to me.
100%.
One example for me is I didn't go to school there, but when I was choosing schools, I compared Harvard University and MIT. I felt completely at home at MIT. The older buildings, the steel windows, the technical vibe, the type of people that were at MIT felt like home. It felt like my people. I went to NJIT. Similarly, I didn't like exactly where the campus was located, but the feel and the tech nature of the school was much more comfortable to me than Harvard University was. I felt like an alien at Harvard. It just didn't fit. The people didn't fit. The architecture didn't fit. It felt like I was pretending to be somebody while I was there. And I didn't know what it was about the design. It's likely that when I was at Harvard, there was some missing need, that I didn't feel like acceptance or some other need that most all humans have to feel like that was right. But at MIT, that same need was being met. When I was there, this is 30 years ago, I didn't have the self-awareness to be able to identify those kind of things. But now I do. And understanding that as an example of how do you feel in a place. All of us, when we're designing or building, are going to be drawing from what I like to call an environmental autobiography. It is your past places, your history of all your past places that you've been to, that you've visited, that you've seen, that you've taken it all in. And that's going to come out in your design. Where did you live as a child? What was your housing situation like? How have you seen other people living? How much have you experienced of other cultures? And what can you take from those different areas? We take all those aspects and we bring them together to synthesize the design for people that want to live in a way that we feel we understand because we've interviewed them and we kind of take a look at what their unmet needs are. And we're trying to meet them. We can only do that from the language that we've learned through our environmental autobiography. That's why I like to push the limits, push those boundaries. I feel like I can learn more by seeing more, by being on the edge, by getting more of the technology under my belt, by understanding more, pushes me to be able to expand my toolbox of design.
I think that really goes to your design philosophy. I really like what you said about the environmental psychologist instead of a designer, right? Because that's what we are. We're designing these environments, taking into consideration the people that are using those spaces. It's not just about the bottom line, the money, which is what I love about you, that you really focus on the bigger picture rather than just the bottom line, because it's a mix of both. It's not just, value engineering and that's it, but it's also a mix of the people using the space and being able to provide for their needs. Has there ever been a time, like a notable time in your career, that's shifted the trajectory, and like what prompted that change for you?
I was working in Newark for a developer, and prior to working in Newark, I developed a skill of working in toxic environments pretty well. It was comfortable and it felt normal based on what my childhood upbringing was like, which involved a lot of emotional neglect. So when I went to work for these people and felt the same kind of environment, I thrived there for a while. At the same time, though, I wasn't able to justify the abuse that I was getting. It was becoming more and more apparent to me that the way I was being treated wasn't okay. And the main reason was the developer wasn't accounting for people. They viewed the tenants as like cattle or worse. They didn't have the mindset of providing value, but only on accounting for dollars. And that led them to provide the worst possible environments that they could. Not just the cheapest, but it was almost like they felt like those people that were living in those places, because they didn't have millions of dollars, did not deserve better. So that judgment about the class or the deservingness of people really kind of triggered something in me there. All people deserve the best that they can get. They can't necessarily pay for it. So how can you collectively provide them with better design, with moving the needle forward? Are they going to live in the same environment as Estee Lauder's granddaughter? No. She lives in a penthouse apartment on Park Ave. They're not going to get that. What you can provide them for is health, safety, welfare, protection, amenity spaces that are accommodative to their type of living. If you're providing a low-income multifamily housing situation, maybe they're not going to have a swimming pool and a movie theater, but they might have an exercise facility. They might have storage facilities that can keep their bicycles and other things safe and secure. You need to meet the needs of those people, and they're going to be different than Estee Lauder's granddaughter. She needs to have the back of house and the staff quarters and all these other things that are different set of unmet needs than the low-income family housing. So by understanding that environmental psychology, where the people's unmet needs are, you meet them appropriately, you're going to maximize your value.
How do you communicate that to clients? Like, how do you collaborate with them? Obviously, there are those that are not willing to accept that and take that into consideration. But now that you've made that pivot and your focus is to work with clients that are open and willing, how do you collaborate in order to communicate the need behind the need?
Well, I say no a lot. I say no a real lot. And then I didn't
no
used
and.
to. Yeah, well, I used to be a people pleaser and try to get them everything and say yes to things that were unmeetable needs.
Mm-hmm.
Most all human needs, and you can go download a needs list off of the internet if you want to see. They can be met. Most of them can be fulfilled by yourself. Some of them require other people, our need for social connection and things like that. The unmeetable needs that I'm talking about that these clients have are the solutions we talked about earlier. They're trying to solve their problem in a clumsy way. They haven't learned yet. They haven't become sophisticated enough yet to be able to meet their own needs, especially when it gets to bigger projects like sky rises and things like that. So I say no a lot. I pivoted to being my main source of income is writing specifications for other architects throughout the world. And there's 4 or 5 of us that are working as a company and providing all of those specifications to other architects for the rest of their building projects. So I don't have to worry about that income to pay for my house and my food and make sure that my kids can go to school. And that's taken care of by my 40-hour a week writing the specs job. Now, how do I provide that other value to other people? Very, very selectively. I choose the clients that I want to work with that do understand what it is that I'm bringing. How am I valuable to them? They've already made the decision that they want to work with me because of the value I'm bringing. And I consistently keep saying the same kind of things about my design philosophy. I'm not changing it up, and I'm not erasing my boundaries or even smudging them a little bit. I keep that high level of integrity so that I know that my value is going to be useful for the people that want to pay my fees. And then I just don't negotiate on the fees either. So it makes it a lot easier when somebody says, oh, you're too expensive. I'm expensive. There's no such thing as too expensive. Right? It depends on what you're getting for the value. Now, if you're only gaining $1 million and I'm charging you $1.2 million, then I am too expensive. Yeah, I'm taking $200,000 out of your pocket. That's not fair. That's not the situation and the value that architects are bringing. A lot of times our cost is less than 3% of the construction cost of the building. Real estate agents are making 6, not as many now, but they used to make 6 on almost every sale of the property. And we're only asking 3 for the design of the property. It's not too expensive. Not for the value that you're bringing, but it may be hidden value. You may not understand it. A lot of times it seems like the only value that an architect is bringing to the project is that seal, that they're sealing their drawings. It's required by the town. So I need you to seal your drawings and I've already figured out everything and I've already done the drawings. You just got to stamp it and then we can be done. And since you're just stamping it, can I pay you $500 or something like that? Well, no, you can't. And here's why. When I'm sealing those drawings, I'm saying that this building is safe and code compliant, and the people that are going into it are going to be safe and code compliant. But I had absolutely nothing to do with the design or drawing of it. And my liability is attaching for 10 years. So I have to pay my insurance for 10 years on your project that you want to pay me $500 for. So $50 a year is what you're paying me for to pay my insurance on your project? No, thank you. Just don't want to have anything to do with that. Now, if you want to utilize my stamp to verify that this building is going to be safe for all the people you're putting into it, but not just the safety, their health, their welfare, their enjoyment of the space. And not just that. When people love a building, they care for it. There's no such thing as deferred maintenance, which is one of my favorite terms. Like, how can we save money? Let's defer the maintenance. Well, if you do that, your building's going to fall down. You got to keep up with those kind of things. If people love the building, they'll take care of it. If people don't love the building and they see that it's cheaply made, they see that things are kind of falling apart, they're not going to want to put any extra money into that building. They're not going to want to maintain it. They're not going to want to sink those costs into that building because the value's not there. They already see that it's crumbling and falling apart. Just let it fall apart.
Not to mention how they're treated too. It's going to massively impact that.
Michelle Obama said at one of the AIA conventions that we had that people know if you care about them. They just have a sense. So as a building developer or an investor, if you're caring deeply about the people that you're putting into that building, it'll show in the design and the construction of that building. If you don't care about them, it's going to show in the design and the construction of that building, and they're going to know. That often leads to these blights in the neighborhoods and the crime in the neighborhoods. People know that people don't care about them, and they don't care about that neighborhood, and the police won't go in there. So there's just a lot of crime because there's no caring.
Environmental psychology.
Yeah.
It's my new favorite term.
It's a great field. There's an author, I just went to a seminar of hers, Dr. Toby Israel. She's an environmental psychologist, and her newest book is called Designing Women's Lives. And she talks about that idea of environmental autobiography. And many of the famous women architects that were pioneers and what their early lives were like and what their environmental autobiography was like and how that affected their designs going on. It's a good read, and she's a wonderful person. So if you can grab a hold of that book, or even meet her, I think she lives in Princeton. It's an awfully good read.
That's so cool. I'm going to grab that, the name from you after the show.
Yeah, Designing Women's Lives, Dr. Toby Israel.
Amazing. What are some common challenges that you face during the design process? How do you overcome them?
Challenges during the design process. Most of the challenges come from site-based difficulties. I don't take on projects that are easy, usually. I usually farm them out to other architects that I know. New construction, flat lot, no boulders, no problem. That's a dream job to be able to get that kind of house because it's very, very easy to produce the drawings. Most of my design challenges, though, are waterfront or urban or historic or something that's a little bit more challenging. I worked on all the specifications for doing the Times Square Theater, the TSX, both the lifting of that building and then the entertainment stage that's going to overlook Times Square with Mancini Duffy. It's a very, very challenging project coming up with those ideas. A lot of the waterfront stuff that I do, hurricane-prone regions, sheet pilings and screw piles and wooden piles driven. There's urban architecture. I worked in Newark for many years trying to rehab a lot of the older buildings. It's stuff you find in old buildings. If you haven't come across it before, the structural systems might have been a little bit different, a little bit more challenging. So figuring out solutions on how to solve those problems. The biggest challenge, most of all, is the clients. Really, it's people not understanding their own needs, not what they're looking for. And then because they're still not getting that need met, they're blaming you for not fixing their problem right away. So that's why I've gotten away from being a people pleaser and saying yes to every job with the fear of not getting paid and not having enough money to being much, much more selective with who I'm doing work with.
Okay, amazing. Yeah, it's tough when there's certain expectations from HGTV or other shows like it and how things are supposed to operate. And then when it comes to actually getting the work done, then, the expectations are off and you can't implement as they had hoped for. So setting those expectations in advance and educating the clients is really important from the get-go.
I agree with the client, managing the client's expectations. I have those conversations, especially about the do-it-yourself TV programs and no permits and things that are going on TV. They're there to sell the products. And if people had known that it was going to get worse before it got better, and if people had known that it was going to take 3 months and not 3 days, they would never go buy the products that are being advertised on those TV shows. So the TV show wouldn't exist anymore. So as a prerequisite for the TV show to exist, they need to lie. They just need to lie to people. That's a little bit unfair to the people out there that come with these unreasonable expectations now. I believe about it in a little bit different way, though. You use the terms educate your client. And I was all in about this because I'd heard it probably from a similar source as you, that one of the best ways is to educate and provide value by educating your client. But I thought about this for a long, long time, and I thought about it this way. Imagine you go into the paint store, and it's Sherwin-Williams, and you bend the ear of the person behind the counter for an hour about all of the paints, and you learn really everything there is to know about the paint in that store. And you also learn that the paint's $53 a gallon. But because you spent all that time in there and gained all that education from the salesperson at the Sherwin-Williams, you go right down the street to the Home Depot and you buy the $23 a gallon paint with all the proper specifications and all the education that you got from Sherwin-Williams. So Sherwin-Williams spent an hour educating you, and you gave your business to the Home Depot. Why? Well, it's $30 cheaper and it's better for you. Why wouldn't you? It just makes good sense. You're getting free education from Sherwin-Williams and spending your money at the Home Depot. Extend that to Liat. I come to you for your design expertise. You educate me in the whole design process and everything that needs to be done. You spend 2 hours of your time. And then I go to a space planner or a drafts person or something that's going to put my ideas on the paper, and we're going to adhere to all of those rules and restrictions and processes that you told us about because you educated us. But now we have the cheaper person that's doing it, not you.
Yes, that can absolutely happen.
It absolutely
could absolutely happen.
It absolutely does happen. And and those tire kickers are looking for you. There's two solutions to it. One is charge for your time all the time. Free consultations, any contact that they're having with you, because you're an expert and you've gotten to the expert status, your time is valuable. They can pay for it. That's also a really good, what they call a monkey's fist to getting into the job. They've already paid you. They already trusted you enough to pay you. So now they don't want to subject themselves to this sunk cost fallacy of I paid $300 to have a meeting with her. Why would I not have her do the rest of the job? That's one solution. The other solution is just don't offer any free education on any of the stuff that's going on. And if they have questions about that stuff, well, that's part of the design process and will become apparent as what's going on. I get that they're not going to be able to say yes to you right away. That's fine. Let them go get their education from somebody else and come back to you. If you're going to be the cheapest person on the block, you're the discount designer, the Walmart of design, you're going to get all those clients that are coming to you last. It's not the end of the world to be in that situation. If they're coming to you last because you're cheapest, you don't have to educate them. You already got educated from the rich people, right? Like from the expensive ones. They're coming to you because you're cheaper. There's nothing wrong with that to be at that level. But if you're not going to be the cheapest one and you want more margin, you want to do a little bit less volume, then you start moving into that expert area where you're not going to be educating them because they're going to run to the cheaper person. Educate your client after they're on the hook, after they're all reeled in, after you're partners in the project. Then you want them to understand fully everything that's going on. You don't want any confusion in their drawings, any confusion in their design. They don't want to be questioning later why your fee is what it is. They want to know everything and have an open and transparent process with them. But don't educate them until they've signed the contract.
There's different levels of education, and I equally find that there's different types of clients. There's clients when you show them value, then they continue to want to work with you, which is a huge aspect to what we're doing with our construction group, is providing a ton of value without expecting anything in return. If there is need, then they come to you for fulfilling it. And then there are those clients that will take, or potential clients, I should say, that will take that information and then go to the cheapest person. Those people, those potential clients, aren't necessarily a good fit in the first place. And it's better that they should at least take that information and go to somebody else than stick with you. And equally, I find that there are so many different ways of approaching projects, and educating them in at least in how the process works is really, really vital so that they know what comes next. So there's two different types of education. There's the education of teaching them what specifically needs to go into the project and what they need to implement in order to bring it to fruition. And then there's educating them about how it works and what to expect. And it doesn't take 3 days. It takes 3 months, or whatever it is that the timeline is, or whatever it is that the budget is. And those shows are sponsored by Home Depot and Lowe's. So
I've used the social media and the website as a primary tool for laying out the process and providing value to those type of clients. So if they come to your website and they say, okay, this is your process, it's all laid out, like the phases of the design, the submission levels, the entire education that they're looking for is available with a quick Google search. And you're absolutely right. The type of client that you're getting is going to be key for you in your business. I've found that people generally like people that are like them, or people that they want to be like. So if they see you as somebody that's got similar values and goals as they do, they'll like you and they'll get to know you and trust you. Or if they see you as somebody that they want to be like and they want to emulate, they'll like you and trust you. Those are the kind of clients that you're going to want to get. So tuning in to somebody that is more akin to your personality style, they're going to be the best client fit for you. If you're a discount type of person and the value, your core belief is that I get the most value by getting the lowest price, you're going to fit very well with that type of client. It's a good business space for you to be in. Barring any judgment from anybody else saying, oh no, you don't want to be down there in the trenches with the tire kickers, you're going to get burned all the time. If you understand that mentality, if you understand what their needs are and that their primary need is to get a good deal, you'll know how to provide that and meet that unmet need for them. That's not what I'm looking for first and primary in my dealing for both goods and services. Do I like a good deal? Yeah, I really love getting a bargain. It's fantastic, but I also recognize that it's not going to happen every day, all the time. What I really like is getting good value. Now, I'm not the kind of person that fawns all over the best service, right? Oh, I have to be pampered and treated kindly, and you have to return my phone calls within 15 minutes and get back to me. There are people that need that, and they have an unmet need of being heard and other psychological issues that you want to meet as the best service. But maybe if customer service isn't your thing and it's not really a primary value that you have, finding a client that needs higher levels of customer service won't fit in your business model. The biggest mistake is trying to be all things to all people, providing best customer service so you capture those group of people that need customer service as their primary driver, providing lowest prices so that you capture the people that have that need for getting a bargain all the time, and then providing all the education so that you're the expert for fulfilling that need for some people that need an expert in the area. It's much better to find the niche based on who you are and what your values are, and then capture those clients that are in that sphere. Let the ones that are kicking the tires go to somebody else. Let the ones that need the high-end customer service and the pampering go to somebody else that's specializing in that. Find the clients that fit with who you are and what your core values are. Let the other ones go aside. You don't need to be everything to everybody.
Correct. And equally for the clients, the potential clients, investors, developers, or whomever needs to work with a designer, to also take into consideration who that professional is and would they be a good fit for their personality and what they need.
Absolutely. And you'll find there's a fear of not finding the right client or finding enough of the right clients if you're limiting yourself like that. So you start to think, I should just expand and expand and expand and grow and go into areas that are different so I get more. There's 7 billion people on the planet. Even if 99.99% don't like what you do, that's going to leave 70,000 people that are potential clients for you.
Right.
You can't
Absolutely.
service all of those people in your entire life, right? So even if 99.99% of the people in the world don't like what you do, you still got such a huge pool to draw from. So you can be very, very, very specific in what you do and who you are, and very selective in the clients because there are so many out there. Where are they? Well, that's part of the marketing department to uncover for you. And it's an entirely different conversation.
Yeah.
But what I want to drive home here is that you don't need to be so fearful about where the next client is coming from, but more truthful to who you are, and that'll attract those clients to you.
100%. How has technology impacted how you design? I know that you're doing a lot of 3D modeling and
fast and furious now, the new technology, these generative adversarial networks, which are neural networks that can uncover images that didn't really exist. They're sort of building the image from an AI standpoint. It's absolutely fascinating. And one of my biggest obstacles in my design career was being able to get the ideas out of my head fast enough before they started to change into something else, right? So we started with yellow tracing paper, and hand sketching is probably the fastest that I could think of to get my ideas out of my head. Now we have a new technology that's even faster than that. So I can describe either with text or images or sketches, hand sketches, napkin sketches, and feed these things into the computer and get a plethora of ideas out of the thing in minutes. And I can keep iteratively generating these different designs over and over again. And then when I nail the prompt and I nail the design, I can produce hundreds of images in a matter of minutes to then evaluate and get closer to what I'm really looking for. The technology is at its infancy now, and I don't believe it's going to replace designers or architects. There's one of the biggest fears that people have is AI going to take my job? I don't see that coming. I see it more of an enhancement, an amplification machine. It's like having your microphone there. We wouldn't be able to have this conversation if you had to shout from Long Island all the way to New Jersey, right? It's just not going to work. But having the technology now allows us to be able to do these things without the travel. Having these newer technologies is going to be able to amplify and augment our design skills, mixing human and machine to be able to do things faster and better than we could before.
It's really great for ideation, getting those thoughts, like you said, onto paper or computer.
and for communicating those ideas. Now,
right, presenting them.
Bill Martin and I
quickly.
have been at the cutting edge in New Jersey for about a year on this, and we've been presenting all over the place. We're going to do a presentation out on Long Island in January at the AIA meeting, and we're doing small firm exchange in New Jersey, and in Pennsylvania, the CSI local or regional conference is going to have us present. And we're showing people how these things work, the ethical obligations that you have when you're going to start using them, and how to do it, basically, how to start creating right away using the AI as an augmentation tool for what you're already doing. Is it going to replace us? I don't see it replacing us anytime soon. There's not a lot of intelligence behind artificial intelligence, just like there's not a lot of wisdom behind conventional wisdom. It's artificial for sure, but it's not thinking, and it's not going to replace the ability of a human to have feelings in a particular space. The computer can produce the image, but it doesn't understand the why behind it, like we were talking about before. What needs will that image now produce? Right. It needs somebody in control. It needs the intelligence behind it, the soul behind it, to really be useful. And because it's in its infancy, many people haven't really figured out that it's a powerful and useful tool yet. They're still seeing it as a novelty. I just caution everybody that if you haven't been in like the Chat GPT or any of these large language models, get in there now and experiment. It's going to be very, very useful and handy in the future. It's been here for years. Like the autocorrect on our Microsoft Word has been here for years. That's a form of AI. This is getting a little bit more complicated now. It's such a productive tool. It's going to save you time, going to save you energy. And if you don't do it, you're going to kind of be left behind. Many people else are going to vault ahead with the ability to do things. I've even seen some of them getting ahead in investment strategies on Wall Street using these large language models. They're able to come up with new algorithms that have never been thought of before to make people money. Yeah. I don't know how to do that. And I'm not passionate about Wall Street. I'm passionate about building. So I've really took into this generating images, designs that I want to show, but there are a lot of other applications that I can see it being very useful for. And that technology is really going to be the driver of our economy in the future. there doesn't seem to be a lot of production type growth areas. Technology is driving all of that. Our economy is in a downturn, not just in a local business cycle. It's running strong right now, but there will be a downturn soon. The Architectural Billings Index has been down 5 months in a row, below 50. Below 50 means it's shrinking. Above 50 means that the billings are growing. And it's been below 50 for the last 5 months. You say, well, what does that mean? It's no big deal. It's just hurting architecture firms. The problem is it's a leading indicator for the whole entire construction industry. If you're not producing drawings and plans, then soon you're not going to be producing buildings, right? So the slowdown starts with the architectural billings and then leads through the entire industry.
Why do you think that is? Does that have to do with
I think it's the interest rates.
The cost? Yeah. The interest rates.
I think it's the interest rates go up, and then the cost of the capital to build one of these large buildings increases that much. So if you're doubling the interest rates, you're going to be doubling that cost of capital to be able to get it done. How can you mitigate against that? Well, you can build faster. The finance on some of these huge projects gets into the hundreds of thousands of dollars a day based on the interest costs. So if you can reduce the time to completion of a project and get that building, that economic engine producing income faster, you'll reduce the cost of building. The only way to do that is really through technology. So hopefully these new technologies can produce the plans faster and then eventually produce the buildings faster. I don't think it's going to put people out of work. Our economy is transformational, and I believe that if there were no jobs picking peppers because we found a pepper picking machine and we didn't need immigrants anymore, all that means is that all the people that were picking peppers are freed up to do something else, something more productive for society, some other thing. Is it that somebody was so enamored with picking peppers that that's what they only wanted to do for their life? No, it's more likely that's what they could do, right? So I don't know what would happen what would you do if your job got replaced by AI, right? What's your next job? I might be an overland truck driver or something like that, but then I'd be replaced by a self-driving truck.
Right.
And then
they already have those.
Right. And then what am I going to do after that? Maybe I'd want to be a fisherman, but be self-fishing boats that are going to be pulling up the fish and bringing them all in for everybody, which is great for feeding society and all these things. But finding your passion where you're going to make your money or do what you want to do. What if there were no money? What if all of our basic needs were being met by these machines and these AIs? Our food was grown, our shelter was built. What would you choose to do then? I'd choose to do a lot more fine art and music and spend a lot more time with my family.
Yes, 100%.
I think that's what really society should be striving for, is to break out of this capitalism. We're using that as a tool to keep people working, to keep people as machines. What if we didn't have to? What if the machines were the machines and the people could be the people? That would be great, pushing towards like a Star Trek type utopia. Of course, there's going to be problems. There's still the problem of scarcity. I feel like there's going to be a breakthrough soon in terms of clean energy. I have a little bit of fear about them making a mistake with the nuclear fusion and creating a black hole where we're living right now. But it's probably an unreasonable fear. I have no idea how to do that. I see this giant machine and they're shooting lasers and they're like, we did it, cold fusion. I'm like, well, did you really? My light bulbs aren't being powered by cold fusion yet. But when we get there, think about it. What's the biggest driver of scarcity? It's energy. Energy is the driver for all of our economy. When we eliminate the problem of energy and the cost of energy, mining the energy, producing the energy, and it becomes free, plentiful, and clean, what's the next thing that's going to be scarce? What's the next thing that's going to cause the problems? This is thinking like Jeff Bezos and what he was thinking about with Amazon.
Right, the trajectory of where things are headed.
I feel like it's going to be water. Like clean, potable water is going to be the next thing that's going to be the scarcity. So where you have water is going to be more plentiful and have economic success, and places that don't have water are going to have more and more problems. And they're going to be dependent on the areas that do have water. With unlimited energy, hopefully we can divert it or produce it or control it more than we do now. But how do you do that? I don't know yet. And by the time it happens, I'll be an old man. But it's something for maybe a 20-something to start thinking about what happens when we get clean nuclear fusion.
In your estimation, what is like the number one personality trait or strength that an architect needs to be the most successful at his job or her job?
Grit or fortitude, like that idea that just keep going, just keep swimming. Architecture is a long, long process to get certified, to get degreed, to get licensed, to all these things, and to give up early because it's just not right for you. I totally get it. I understand it. There are going to be days where it doesn't seem right. It doesn't seem like, because it's such a long, I think it's 13 and a half years to licensure is the average. And I think it took me over 16 years. It's not an easy thing to do. So having that grit, that willingness to keep going, even in the face of adversity, is probably one of the key core personality traits that I think every architect needs to have. And it's also one of those things that I think that the test, the ARE, Architectural Registration Exam, is really looking for. It feels like most people fail part of those tests, if not some, if not everyone. The passing rate's somewhere in the neighborhood of like 64 to 67% for each of the tests, and there's 6 of them. So there's a lot of failures that happen. It's not really a failure unless you stop taking the test. There's setbacks, right? You fail when you quit. So having the grit to keep going, that fortitude that, I'm going to be able to do this eventually, and not view it as a personal setback or a personal affront that you can't. Having that growth mindset that I just need to learn a little bit more to become a minimally qualified candidate. I can do this. You can get through.
And I think that could transfer to investors or developers or whomever else working, realtors, whoever else working in the real estate industry as well. That grit and fortitude is super important for anything, any project or anything that you're tackling in life. It's really a mindset.
And the other thing that I would have to say is to don't make it about yourself. This is not about you becoming a great investor, or you becoming a great architect, or you becoming a great designer, or it's about finding the ability to help other people within you. You don't have to be great yet. Greatness doesn't come like that. Greatness comes from doing all of the best that you can in very little things incrementally over time. It all piles into a big bucket of greatness, but you can't just burst on the scene and be great at anything. I mean, I think of Michael Jordan, the basketball player for the Chicago Bulls. He missed more shots than he ever made. He lost more games than he ever won in the final minutes. The greatness came from that persistence, that grit, that fortitude to keep showing up and keep doing your best on a daily basis, the best that you can do with what you have where you are. That leads to greatness. It's not in one fell swoop. It's in all the little things and the consistency. That being said, many of us as designers lack consistency. And that's because we're creative types and we're multi-passionate. So we go in different directions wherever the next shiny thing is, rather than sticking with the one thing over and over again. Capitalism rewards you being consistent. Small gains over and over and over and over again. For somebody with ADHD or just a very multi-passionate creative type, that gets boring. That gets boring as heck. You don't want to do the same thing over, show up and pump gas and fill every car up and I make 15 cents on every tank of gas. And woohoo, by the end of the day, you got thousands of dollars in the bank, but so boring, right? So if you can find something to automate those boring systems that are making money for you and you're a creative type, by all means, that's what a lot of people call this passive income. There's no such thing, by the way, as passive income. Nobody just mails you money.
Here you go. Here's your handout.
Right. Like the closest thing you can get to mailbox money is like these developers create these box stores and they got a triple net lease. And that's about the closest thing you can get to mailbox money. The tenant's paying their own taxes. You're just getting the rent. It's a corporate bond. That's fantastic. But you've already put in all the work. It's like front loading all the work. You've built the building. You've invested all the money. So now for the next 10 years, you can sit back and reap the rewards. But it also requires all that initial investment in time and money up front. And it's the same kind of ideas of developing a course on the internet to sell to people or any of the other, this works for me kind of affiliate marketing, right? You can't do any affiliate marketing unless you're producing content. That's work. You got to admit that you may enjoy it,
front.
right? But you're putting the time and the effort in to create all of those things, and then you're selling them in a different way. So just having that consistency over and over again to keep showing up and do the best that you can in whatever it is you're going to do is going to be successful.
And rendezvous with other people who feel the same way and are on the same wavelength.
Absolutely. And then finding your passion within that or ways to shake up that kind of automated stuff so that you can express your artistic side, your creativity, and you get the joy and the passion from your work. That's where you pepper that kind of stuff in. But if you just focus on one of those that I've heard many times from many different people, find what you're passionate about, and you'll never work a day for the rest of your life, right? You just sort of work in your passion. But if you're multi-passionate, you're kind of all over the place and doing these different things. You lack the consistency to live in a capitalistic society where the best way you can meet people's unmet needs is consistently doing the same thing over and over again and doing it so well that you become an expert in it.
Become, the 10,000 hours.
Exactly. So you have to marry the two ideas of that creative blend and making yourself happy with being very, very consistent and finding that system to keep bringing the money in over and over again.
Amazing. I love that. Is there one question that you wish that I would have asked you, and how would you have answered that?
All right. So there's a little bit of a pause here. And while I'm thinking of this other question, I just want to anecdotally tell you a little story. It's called the 7-second rule. Mm-hmm. I learned this in public speaking too. As an architect, you have to be in front of a lot of people presenting a lot of different ways. And also I'm this year's president for the American Institute of Architects for New Jersey. So I lead 2,000 plus architects, monthly meetings. And the 7-second rule is when you ask somebody a question, especially a group of people, just wait 7 seconds. Count it out loud in your head. Count out the 7 seconds. It gives people time to process the question, to think about it. And then it gives them a little bit more time to work up the courage to actually speak about what they were thinking about. If you don't give them 7, usually at the number 7, somebody in the group will pipe up with their answer and they'll be able to start the articulation. If they don't, you can tell them about the 7-second rule and that you were counting it out in your head. And that gives them a little bit more time to think about your question and to be able to answer it.
I love that.
So the one question that I think would be best is how does somebody get into the AE space? Like you're sitting outside, you're doing something else. You've always wanted to be a fill in the blank. If you're George Costanza, it's architect. Investor, realtor, whatever. Developer. Even if you want to start framing, how do you get into it? My answer to that would be first is research really well the industry that you think you want to go into. A lot of us get an idea of, I want to do that because, and then I saw it on TV. I read about it in a book. I had some other tangential experience with what it was, but I'd never got immersed in it. So if you had an Uncle Joe that used to hang drywall and you think you could hang drywall too, maybe only Uncle Joe ever talked about was the good things that happened when he was hanging drywall. And that's why you want to go do that. Never talked about all the problems. Maybe Uncle Joe was a positive person. A lot of the people I knew in construction were highly negative, so I never wanted to go into construction. They were complaining all the time. I had to carry the wood all day long and then swinging the hammer. I hurt my back. And okay, I don't want to do that.
My father hates hanging drywall.
You hear these stories of people that have good experiences at their work. They're passionate about it. So you may gravitate towards that job. Lawyer is one that's often romanticized on TV a lot. Like lawyers do not spend 90% of their time in court arguing and then the judge is banging the gavel and they win. They spend 98% of their time reading and redlining documents. And then maybe 2% of the time they get to see the inside of a courtroom. So if you go in thinking I'm going to be a lawyer and I'm going to get to see all this court drama and action and I'm an excellent argument, and you don't realize that your dyslexia is holding you back. You got to read 98% of the time. Why do you want to do that? Maybe hanging drywall is a better job for you. Get a lot more enjoyment because the amount of reading that the drywall guy is going to do is maybe he has to read whether it's 5/8 inch thick or 1/2 inch thick on the side and whether it's fire core or not. There's not a lot of reading going on while you're hanging the drywall. So really research what particular skill set is needed in the field that you're going into and whether it's going to fit with your personality. I struggled in college trying to figure out what it was I was going to do. I thought, I'm good at math, I'm good at science. My dad was an engineer. I'll be an engineer. And then when I was in engineering school, I was getting colossally bored with engineering. It was very reductionist. It was no but. And I needed yes and. Architecture school was a lot more yes and a lot less no but. So I was able to find the place where I could activate that creativity within me. And I found that field fit right for me. So what I do in architecture really fits with my personality, whereas engineering didn't. Now, I have all the training to be an engineer, and I do a lot of work that would be attributed to engineers normally that I do for myself because I have that training. But if I focused specifically on engineering, I wouldn't be happy in my life. So choosing how and where you're going to go into this AE space is highly dependent on who you are and what your core values are. Figuring that out for yourself is really a a process rather than just picking, hey, that's a good job, I can make money at it. There's enough of different careers within our space that you can find the right one that you're going into.
Right. Or with any space, really. Amazing. What would be like your 3 key takeaways or your tips regarding having a successful project in terms of architecture?
Number 1 is be true to who you are as a designer and know who you are, know what your core values are, know what those beliefs are. Number 2, know the client or the end user, not necessarily the client. If it's just the developer that's going to be flipping it and selling it to a convenience store, know the people at the convenience store that are going to be using that space. So know the end user of the space, because you can't really design for that user unless you know what their needs are going to be, because your goal is to meet the unmet needs of the end user without them asking. And then finally, continually grow, become an expert in your field, becoming an expert in whatever you're doing, because you have a growth mindset. You're going to continually get better. You're not already the best, or you're not already anything. There's a chance for you to get better and to grow in everything that you're doing. Don't give up. This is the only way we've ever done it before. There may be a new way. Be open to it. Be open to the change. Be open to the ideas. When we know better, we do better. So always be growing. Those 3 things: know yourself, know your end user, and have a growth mindset are my top 3 takeaways.
Would you say that applies to also investors and developers who are using architects? Like, would it be the same 3 takeaways for them?
It's similar. Knowing yourself and knowing your end user is knowing business. Now, I say have a growth mindset as an architect because you're always going to be growing into that. As an investor, I don't think you necessarily need to have a growth mindset. As an investor, what you need to do is have a repeatable process. I was successful once. It wasn't because it was a black swan day and I got lucky and everything worked out. It was successful because we put together a plan, we put together a team, and we executed properly. That process becomes repeatable. You do it over and over and over again. And that's how you make money. It's not about a home run when it's investing in real estate. It's having a repeatable process. So it's a series of singles. You're going to win the game by just repeating this process over and over again. You're not running out of opportunities. You're not running out of space. There's plenty of real estate. There's plenty of land. There's plenty of opportunity out there. It's just find a repeatable process. That lets you get good. It lets your team get good. It lets you use less materials, less mistakes. It's like creating the Henry Ford's Model T. Once he got that construction process, that assembly line set up, you could crank out car after car after car. You're going to do the same thing as an investor. If you can buy one strip mall and get it fully leased, and now your turnover or your occupancy rate is like 80% there, that's fantastic. You're making money at that. Once that's settled in and you're making money at that, go do the same thing. Don't go build a stadium or go build an aquarium or something like that because you're like, oh, now I'm a real estate developer. I can do anything. Do another strip mall, do another strip mall, do another strip mall. Maybe after you've got 10, 15 of these things under your belt, you can branch out into a different space, but don't do it too soon. There's growing too fast will sink your ship just as much as not growing at all.
I love that. Having a repeatable model is really important.
Absolutely.
For success. Amazing.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons that in architecture is different. We can, and some do, continually do the same thing in the same space over and over and over again. But many other architects want the novelty and that dopamine hit of, I'm doing something brand new, I'm researching all this stuff, I'm getting to do it a different building type, because that's a lot more exciting and a lot more interesting. It doesn't make a lot of money doing it that way. It's just exciting and interesting. The repeatability of something is what will make you a lot of money. And that's just due to the way that our society is set up. We're set up for specialization right now.
Right. And efficiency as well. Like once you have that expertise and you're able to put systems into place, then it just goes much faster.
Mm-hmm. You're not reinventing the wheel for each new thing that you have to do.
Amazing. Where can our audience find you?
They can find me on LinkedIn. I'm not very active on LinkedIn. I'm most active on Facebook just to interact and talk with people. And we have several different groups on Facebook dedicated to architecture and design. I'm in most all of those Facebook groups, and if you find one that you're in that I'm not in, let me know. I'll join the group. I like to provide value on the Facebook and check. We have an Entree Architect group that was started by Mark LePage, many years ago. And it's a fantastic group where we as architects can share the information that we need back and forth. And it's a safe space where people can ask questions and get their answers that they need. And there's no shame for them finding out something maybe they didn't know. And that's
Amazing.
like that.
And for our investors, they can definitely find you in our construction and renovation group.
Absolutely. And I'm happy to provide value. I'm not looking to hit any home runs when it comes to providing value, but I can provide architectural services for people that do need them on a quick basis, especially if we click our personalities. So I'm happy to help wherever I can. Thanks,
Thank you so much for joining us, Brian.
I had such a great time. Thank you.
Me too.